So this episode, I'm going to look at the first movement of Brahms' second clarinet sonata, the Op.120 number 2, and the first movement. And this is a companion episode that goes with my podcast that you can find on a number of platforms, iTunes and Spotify. And my aim is to try and help the clarinetist, the student, whatever your ability and standard, of trying to help to interpret Brahms's musical style. In all the years that I've been performing and teaching these pieces, I find myself repeating the same kind of things, and I think it can be useful to just go through and look at the different elements that there are in the piece and understand how they're developed and how clever they are, but also just with an idea to helping unlock the secrets, the language that Brahms uses. And some of the things that I find myself working on when I'm performing these pieces. One of the first things that I remember when I was learning this in music college was one of my teachers explaining the relationship between Brahms and Clara Schumann, which was a friendship that developed increasing amounts of intimacy, but perhaps not being consummated, should we say. And throughout Brahms' life, he grew ever closer to Clara Schumann. And I remember my teacher telling me a phrase to help learn this very, very first phrase, the first theme, which is, "How I love you, Clara Schumann." So when you have this this theme, "How I love you, Clara Schumann," and it's always stuck with me as being a really clever way of phrasing, understanding the shape of this first phrase when you're embarking on this sonata. How I love you, Clara Schumann. So, how I love you, Clara Schumann. And this dotted crotchet quaver figure that we have at the beginning is something that is a feature both in this first theme. As you can see here, these sort of halting phrases that the clarinet has. Ta-dee-do-dum, pa-dee-do-dum. And this is developed, this first theme idea is developed all throughout the piece, and we'll discover that's the first one of the first features that we have here. You can see it in the clarinet part, and then it's taken over in the left hand of the piano here, and then also in this sort of very stormy figure that comes in the piano at the bottom of the page. Here you can see these dotted crotchets that are played in canon. It starts in the right hand and then they're sort of imitated in the left hand of the piano. And this continues throughout the whole of this sonata first movement. Another thing that we have, and that's an interesting feature, is it's just a small thing that one might not notice. It's this octave leap that we have in the theme here. This is something that is used a lot in this piece later on. I'm just going to draw your attention to it now, and then I'll refer back to it when I turn over the page. But this octave leap is quite important, and also the leap of a tenth. We have this tenth interval here from the G to the B flat. This was used again in the first sonata, the F minor sonata. The tenth that we have in the theme there was again these very big, wide-ranging intervals, very expressive. So the octave and the tenth are something that Brahms keeps returning to as being, expressing these very large emotions. And even though this movement is much more a calm first movement in contrast to the F minor's stormy theme, we still have these large intervals that are very expressive. And when we're playing on the clarinet, they're easily achieved, but we want to kind of make them feel as smooth and as legato as possible. In my podcast, I talk about the importance of the line that goes through this phrase, not breathing in these rests here, trying to play the longest legato line possible, and probably not breathing, waiting to breathe to here and here, so that we're creating this very, very long sinewy line. Another thing it's worth on this first page when we're looking at the first theme to just notice is this bit that we have from here, this phrase that goes through to the F, is repeated an octave lower but in quicker notation. So we can see we've got this and the triplets here. And that's just an interesting little variation that Brahms immediately imposes on his theme. As in the first sonata, there's lots of imitation or canonic movement that happens. So when we've had this first lovely, friendly theme that happens, then we have this falling arpeggiated figure here in the piano that's answered with an upward rising clarinet figure. Again, Brahms is setting out all of his material that he uses throughout the first movement. If we look to this point here, the next point of interest after the stormy piano interjection is that this is, as you can see, is related to our first theme. It's just a fifth higher, and is now we move into a slightly new territory where this sort of tripletized sort of falling away figure here as the energy ebbs away. Then we have our second subject, which is here, which starts again with this octave that I just pointed out in the opening. Again, we have a canon with the piano. So in the first sonata, it was the piano that started the second subject material, and the clarinet followed. In this sonata, it's the clarinet doing the leading, and this new idea is brought into play. The interesting thing, I think, here is that we have the dynamic marking sotto voce, which is another one of Brahms's interesting dynamic qualifications that he uses to colour the music, the material that is being played. So we have lots of pianos, and we don't have the mezzo pianos and mezzo fortes that we're accustomed to with music from the 20th century onwards. So Brahms uses these qualifying words. So sotto voce here meaning covered or subdued. It's almost as if it's a more intimate voice, and that you're talking to. I like the image of children seated at your feet, and you're telling a story, and you're talking in slightly more hushed tones than you've said so far. So this piano sotto voce second subject, we need to find some really beautiful, covered, more intimate tone qualities, particularly as we've got then a pianissimo to follow, and then this dolce still within pianissimo, and then we diminuendo. So all of this paragraph of music, the second subject paragraph, is couched in this much more hushed tones. There's a new element that comes in, which is kind of, I think, is sort of related to the dotted crotchet idea that I referred to on the first page. So here we've got this dotted crotchet figure that is taken on in the stormy piano writing, and then when we look on the second page, this sort of chun chun, we get the sort of feeling of a dotted crotchet here and here. So chun chun. So the rhythm is trying to put the other way around with the quaver first, and this sort of adds a sort of an urgency in the piano part here, whereas everything else has been fairly calm so far. This sort of portends some kind of unease and restlessness. So when we have the sort of the development or the extension of this idea in the clarinet part from here, where we're extending the line T da 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 dee, and we add these triplets. So Brahms has already introduced triplets up here on at the sort of first the top of this second page before we even get the second subject. But he's using the triplets again here, which again becomes a new feature. We have these. It's introduced at the top, and then it's expanded here, and then it's expanded again into this sort of succession of triplets as we rattle through into this, to the next sort of slightly stormy interjection that the piano has here. And then we've got a variation on the first theme here in the clarinet part. Ta-dee-dom, ya-da-da-dee-dee-dom. And underneath now, those triplets that were introduced are continued in the clarinet part. And this introduces the sort of idea of 3 against 2. So you can see here we've got triplets in the piano part, and we've got duplet quavers against that. This always creates a sort of a degree of instability or of friction or rippling in the sound, because we have 3 working against 2. And then that's further developed, and then we've got 3 against 4 or 4 against 3 in this section here. So this, again, this sort of sense of unsettled music to a degree, even though it's a beautiful melody in the clarinet part, there's some kind of rippling underneath that's happening. Then our triplets that we had are then passed between the clarinet and the piano's left hand. Still, we've got the 3 against 2 here, you can see, where the piano's taking over the melody that was just played by the clarinet, top of the page. Then this is then taken over, is repeated by the piano, but is truncated, is not continued in the same way. It's only a couple of bars, and then we return to this cha-cha figure in the piano, and we have our octaves back again. And this is, I think, is always this sort of linking passage here. Can be quite difficult for people to know how to play. This piano marking here is, again, this idea that dynamics are very particular for Brahms. This is, I think, if you think more of a kind of a mezzo forte diminuendo going through, then by the time you get to here, this really is a sort of like a pianissimo, and then you glow into this piano. You can do a little bit of a crescendo as you come back into focus, where we have our first theme again. So this is the opening theme, which quickly ebbs away here, you can see. So we have that first theme, as I say, it ebbs away, and on this page, I always think this is like a questioning, sort of a sense of, so what's going to happen now? This ta-ding, po-ding, it's kind of very much up in the air, and this is the beginning of our development. So this is the development section, and we can see we have that theme that the main theme that was, we have it here in the clarinet, and we've had that stormy outburst in the piano, ti-da-dom, the dotted crotchet idea that's again, it's played as a canon between the 2 hands of the piano. And very quickly the clarinet line ebbs away, and we're left with this sort of tolling bell quality here. So we come down, this forte piano, it's a sort of like a long accenting way. We lose all of the energy that we had through these bars here, and then we're left with the second subject played by the piano. So ti-dum, pa-da-dum, ti-dum, this sort of halting, which is then taken over by the clarinet here again, sotto voce, with a canon in the piano. So all of those elements that I've just talked about, we have the arching main theme, we have the dotted crotchet figure, we have the triplets, we have the dynamics, the sotto voce. All of those things are developed here. So again, we've got the triplets with the 3 against 2, so we have this answering figure. You can see this wonderful chord. This is a really beautiful chord, this one here. It's not very easy to see as you're doing it across the bar line, but we're sort of diminuendoing here in the clarinet part, and this tied E that goes across the bar line just hands the baton of the tune over to the piano, which takes it over there with the tune ta-da-dee-da, which is answered by the clarinet there. And again, we've got our 3 against 2 happening all the way through this passage. The piano again has another attempt, even more eager, ta-da-dee-dum-pa-da-dee-da, with the clarinet immediately answering. And then interestingly, Brahms decides that he's going to take that triplet idea and make that into a linking passage, a sort of secondary theme. So we have this section here, which can be the bane of a lot of clarinetists' lives, because it's sort of, we've got all these broken arpeggios going up, which start in the clarinet and then they descend and recede in the piano part. Clarinet again is in the ascendancy and answered by the piano. So there's a lot of this woven music between the two parts, which was quite new for the clarinet. The clarinet was very much treated as a duet between the two instruments. It's not just a clarinet part with a piano accompaniment. It's very much woven between the two instruments. So this section here always catches players out, because we have, if you've got the simple system of clarinet where you don't have an extra E flat, it probably necessitates that these two notes need to be played both on the right hand side, so that you can then get to the left hand A flat. If you've got the left hand E flat, then you can negotiate that without any problems. But as you can see, we start with sort of A major arpeggios, and then we have a shift down. We have an A flat major arpeggios happening here, and then G. So we're moving chromatically. This is high romantic period music. So chromatic movement is to be expected. And as this develops further, when we're going through this sort of passage from here all the way through, this is very much moving chromatically. We've got all of our triplets happening, divided between the instruments. So again, this figuration, 3s against 2 happening in all of this bit here, and again here. So we can see our triplets here and our duplets here. And then we go into the most tortured bit. This is the most chromatic section of the development. We sort of start with the G flat tonality here, which is very quickly switched enharmonically. So we've got F sharp, our G flat turns to F sharp, which means that we're kind of, this becomes a pedal F sharp here. You can see in the bass and the piano, we've got lots of F sharps. And over the top, we've got very chromatic harmony. And this is, again, if we talk about the dynamic language that Brahms uses, we've got our forte here, and then forte espressivo, same as we had here. So the forte espressivo is really kind of like a fortissimo in our real terms, or it's the most forceful, the most passionate. And all of this is 3s against 2. And there's this sort of turbulence that happens, and we have this sort of perfect cadence kind of happening here in B major, and then the chromatic writing again continues here with E, E sharp, F sharp, and then interestingly this sort of shift here, this is quite an unusual shift. We have F sharp to F flat. Now that's not something that you see very often, but having shifted enharmonically here from flats to sharps, then we need to pivot back here to enable us to get back to our home key of E flat major. So you can see here we've got our E flat, the cadence is coming, A flat, A natural, B flat. So now we've got our dominance which just turns into a dominant 7th. So we've got B flat 7, which finally gives us our much needed recapitulation here. So there's our E flat, return to E flat major. But Brahms hasn't quite finished, even though we have our recapitulation here. He wants to use some of the material that was introduced in the development section, this idea with the triplets. He's not quite finished with all of the twists and turns of the development, if you like. Here we have the second subject revisited, and now in A flat. So we've got C flats down here, so this sort of darker harmony that's happening. And So we're in sort of C flat major here, and he doesn't stay there. Still, he's still constantly sort of varying all the themes that we have, all those the cha-cha rhythms that we had here, and the triplets again, but not extending them. Only extending here, and we have that stormy outburst again. That ta-dee-dum, which was originally on a high C, is now down on the F with the triplet figures in the piano part. And we then have, this is all familiar territory, we've been here before with the triplets passing between the instruments, but we're not quite in the same key as we were before. And again, we go back to the second subject material with these octaves happening, that same ascending figure, which takes us back to the variation on the first theme with a triplet underlay in the piano. And then again, we have these constant twists and turns, just as we think that we're maybe we're going to get back to the home key again and finish the piece out. We have this really unexpected chromatic shift from the E flat here. We've got E flat 7, you can see with the D flat there, and shifting down a semitone to E major. So we have that music that was taken from the first theme with the descending arpeggios and ascending arpeggios in the clarinet. And then you can see we're on our last page, and that music is still being developed here. If you look at the harmony, you think of we're in E flat major, and we've got B major harmony here, and then E major again, and you can see this all shifting, and we're in sharp keys. We've still got lots of sharps. All of this 3 against 2 that's happening at the top of the page, this yearning with triplets underneath it. So that's again creating this sort of tension. And then Brahms introduces the coda material. The coda probably started back. Where's that coda? Coda's probably about here. This new material with the triplets that we've had, with this on chun chun with the 3 against 2 is continuing, but now this molto dolce sempre is really important. That's the most tender and beautiful playing possible. It's a real subito. This is crescendoing here. Just change my colour. So this big crescendo with all this turbulence, and then suddenly we have a subito piano drop on that bit here. So really tender, and then again all the energy diminishes, and we have this turn here which needs much more time than we think. We finally have this cadence. Pom, ta-dee-dum, ta-dee-dum. So the piano is leading here. This is the tune, which is kind of like what was being described here in the clarinet part. Ti-da-da-dum, ti-da-dum, ta-dee-dum, 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 ta-dee-da. And the clarinet is using that triplet figure that we had as the linking passage earlier on in the piece. It now becomes a feature which sees us out to the end of the piece with these rising triplets and this ta-da-dum. So we sort of go up first and then down the other side, and eventually we have this nice calm ending back into E flat. So for the most part, this movement is quite sort of calm. As I said, the opening we had Allegro amabile as being the indication, which is friendly, is amiable. But as with the F minor sonata, there's definitely some kind of unsettled, some turbulence along the way. So that's the counterpoint, if you like, to the calmness that, or the resignation that Brahms has found in his final work of chamber music. It's an important work, and I think it's really important to kind of look at these first 2 movements of each sonata and just get a little bit go under the surface and find out how they're put together. So I hope that's been useful, and you can follow my scribbles on the piano score here. I would always recommend to any student to make sure that they check out the piano part for the accompaniment that they're playing. It's an obvious thing to say, but often I find that certainly younger players, they're not encouraged to look at the piano score as much as they look at their own line, and you can't do that with Brahms. It's so interwoven that you need to know whether you're playing the tune and how you're passing it from yourself to the piano, and how the piece develops in this sort of like baton passing is totally enmeshed. So you really can't just look at the clarinet part alone. So do check out my website, www.stuart-king.com, and there you'll find links to the podcasts that accompany this YouTube channel. So I look forward to exploring some more music with you very soon.